The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
In case you need a reminder that people can muster incredible resilience and rebound after a brutal health emergency, tonight we'd like to refresh your memory with our past conversation with Nicole Moore. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. She literally lived to tell the story of how she was almost eaten by a shark. A shark! Also, we'll hear from our Ontario hubs about the 1918 pandemic that's still commemorated as part of Niagara's history. Ten years ago, Ontario nurse Nicole Moore survived a shark attack in Cancun. We spoke to her in 2016 about it. She has since undergone her final reconstructive surgery. And one of the most monumental moments she's had since being on the show, her first dip back into the water to go scuba diving again. She's been active in many things since and even went swimming with whale sharks. Her motto, bite back with attitude and persevere despite the fear. And in case you were wondering, the book, Jaws, by Peter Bentley, became a bestseller 45 years ago in 1974 and an iconic film in the summer of 1975. But she lived the film. Here's that conversation with Nicole.
Wading into the brilliant blue waters of the Caribbean Sea 5 years ago was nearly the last thing that nurse Nicole Moore ever did. She was viciously attacked by a bull shark and lost 60% of her blood, an arm, and was left with a permanently disfigured leg. It's all laid out in a new book called Shark Assault, an amazing story of survival, and she's with us now here in studio, and I can't believe you're here. I know I said this when I first met you. I can't believe you're here.
I'm very lucky to be here.
I can't believe you're here. Like, it's ridiculous that you're here.
It is.
You should be dead.
I should be. I should be shark food in the water.
Well, I wouldn't have put it that way, but okay. Let's bring this map up. This is where you were 5 years ago when this absolutely shocking thing happened. You went down to a hotel in Mexico for a friend's 50th birthday party, and on the 31st of January, you finished playing volleyball. You wade into the water, I guess, to get some of the sand off you.
Yes.
And what happened?
So just as I'm rinsing off the sand on my body, oddly enough, because I'm going scuba diving, so it's ironically that I'm getting ready for that. Anyways, I'm rinsing off the sand, and these guys on some jet skis are yelling at me off in the distance. And I'm looking around going, what's your problem? Because I'm in shallow water, you have the whole ocean. I thought they were just trying to get me to get out of their way. They seemed pretty adamant. They were yelling pretty fiercely at me in Spanish, so I had no idea what they were saying. But I put up my hand and said, okay, and turned around and started to walk back to shore. So I'm only waist deep in the water, just above my waist. And while standing there, I didn't realize that they had seen two full-grown bull shark enter the shallow waters of their resort. So the lifeguards whistled their swimmers out of the ocean, and these guys on jet skis went out to try to corral these sharks, to try to get them to go to deeper water. That warning was not passed down the beach. And I was in the water going one way as the sharks are coming another way. As I'm wading into the water, the first thing I feel is this bump.
So you did not see them?
I never saw it.
Never
heard the Jaws theme dun, dun, under the water, but no, I never saw anything. I didn't suspect it at all. Never thought in the shallows of Cancun that this would be a threat at all. But after that bump, within seconds later, I sustained my first shark bite, which was to my left upper thigh. I'll later learn it ripped off 2 of my quadriceps and 2 of my hamstrings right down, exposing femur, just ripped it clean.
Nicole, you've got the pictures in the book that show what happened to your limbs after the attack. We're not going to show them here because the pictures are just, graphic. I mean, they're very profound. Mm-hmm. They are very profound. Yeah. This is going to sound like a dumb question, but when you sustained that first shark bite, you know, I've talked to other people in the past, you know, like for example, who got shot and they didn't feel it at first. Mm-hmm. Did you feel it right away?
I did not feel it. I'm sure I felt something. I don't recall feeling any pain at all. My body went instantly into fight or flight mode. And although I never saw the sharks, as soon as that ocean started to fill bright red with my blood, I knew what it was. I knew immediately.
And did you feel the second bite?
The second bite was a bit more traumatic because the leg I couldn't see. It was just bright red, and all I was thinking in my head was sharks like blood. I need to get out of this water. So I started to pull myself to shore, walk to shore, not realizing the damage beneath the water. But the shark came back and swallowed my entire arm in its mouth. So its eyes are up here and its bottom jaw is down here, and it's halfway out of the water and it's thrashing, trying to take me down. So I'm face to face literally with the shark, and that's terrifying, as anyone that's watching can imagine. So it was just, I didn't feel anything. It was total shock, and then instinct kicked in.
And what did that mean? You punched it.
I punched it, yeah. My good hand right here, and I hit it right in its nose and pulled my arm out. Probably caused more damage than not, but...
Let's bring the picture up. This is what you look to your left and that's what you saw.
That's what you see, yeah.
Any clue how big the shark was that attacked you?
They say it was anywhere from 6 to 8 feet, which is about the average size of a full-grown bull shark. And bull shark are vicious sharks. Great whites are called like I don't know how they word it in the book, but that they're known for killing, but it's nothing compared to a bull shark and their aggressiveness.
When you punched it in the nose, what happened?
It let go.
It did, eh?
It let go. It finally decided, that's it. I'm not gonna mess with her anymore. And I don't know where that instinct came from. I think it came from scuba diving, where we learn eyes, nose, gills, and I think that's where it came from. But I'm just very lucky that it came to mind and I reacted.
You know the stats though on this, right? You are more likely to die from a lightning strike or from a spider or from a dog than from a shark.
Yes.
And yet here you are, attacked by a shark. Having said that, this past year, we're going to bring a graphic up here because this past year was the biggest ever for unprovoked shark attacks, according to the International Shark Attack File. There we go. That's what it looks like around the world. Do you have any sense of why that shark decided to attack you at that moment in shallow water?
I tasted really good. No, I'm sorry.
You've got a sense of humor about all this.
I do. There are many theories that I've heard of since this. I've been drawn into the shark world since this attack, and many theories. But the number one theory is that particular area was a breeding ground for sharks. And when the hurricane came and took the reef and the beach out, they dragged sand to rebuild this, thus destroying their breeding ground. So these sharks, they're guessing a pair of sharks was coming in to meet and was threatened. So they were aggressively being hit by these guys on jet skis and being pushed in my direction. So they collided with me, wondering, is this part of the assault that we're enduring? They were agitated. It's so rare, as you said, that sharks attack, and I don't want anyone to be discouraged from going into the water because of my story. It's just, you should go in the water, you should enjoy. If there's sharks around, they usually will swim away and not bother with you. Just make sure no one's hitting them.
You've gone back to the scene of the crime.
I did, yeah.
Why'd you want to do that?
I needed to go back to make sure that I wasn't harboring any type of fear whatsoever. I have been fortunate not to suffer any post-traumatic stress, not even a single nightmare about sharks because of this, but I thought, maybe if I go back to that area, maybe there'll be something that's hiding and I need to face that. So back to the exact scene of the attack and back into the water. And we've done so with my family and every year since.
And without incident, obviously.
Without incident, thank goodness, knock on wood. No.
Sheldon, top of page 5, this picture. Do you remember this? Do you have any memory of this? That's
no,
you.
That was, I can't believe that someone actually snapped that picture. Oh, the joy of today of social media, because that's what my friends and family were seeing first, that pasty pale look of death on my face. I was pretty much dead at that point. You could see it.
You have no recollection of that moment yourself?
I remember lying on the beach, being strapped on the backboard, yes, being carried about. I remember the whole thing. I was awake and alert and orientated through the whole thing, and in fact, directing my care on the beach as much as I could. You
said in the book, I'm at death's door. Mm-hmm. So you knew your mortality was on a razor's edge at that moment.
I did.
So what did you say to yourself to try and hang in there?
Well, a lot of it was my nursing that kicked in. As soon as I reached a point where I couldn't breathe, I knew that I had lost so much blood that I was what's called hypovolemic, not enough blood to exchange in my lungs. And the next point is that the heart just stops then. It can't sustain that. So I'm living this, and I realize what's happening as I'm gasping for air, and I just want to go to sleep. So I talked to the two responders that were next to me, and I said, keep me awake. And then I just tried to keep calm and keep my heart rate as low as I could to keep any exchange or any demand low.
Keep me awake?
It was a very conscious effort on my part to stay awake and stay alive. And
Keep me awake because if you fall asleep, you will die?
yes.
You will.
I knew if I had fallen asleep, I would die. And I kept thinking of my children. I have two beautiful girls. And I kept thinking of them and my wonderful husband. I'll get emotional now. And just keep on fighting for them. Mm-hmm.
If I recall, it was, I can't die like this. I have to stay alive for my family.
Yeah, I don't want my children to lose their mother this way. Mm-hmm.
The book describes you as sort of directing your own first aid at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you have the presence of mind to do something like that?
I have no idea. And I really think that when you're faced with trauma, that's what the body does. It just kicks into gear and into survival mode. And I love trauma. Hopefully not my own ever again, but that's my nursing that kicked in. So.
They put you in an ambulance. It was a very bumpy ride to the hospital. You got to the hospital. What kind of, how would you describe the kind of medical care you received there?
It was shocking. It was actually appalling because I can't breathe. I've lost over 60% of my blood at this point. I am dying. I'm lying on that table dying, and everyone is standing around not doing anything while I'm lying on the trauma table. And there's this argument going on in Spanish, and I hear assicuración. And I know I don't speak Spanish, but I speak Italian, and assicurazione is insurance. But here I am, I'm wearing a bikini like you just showed in the photo. It's not like I'm hiding an insurance card somewhere. So I couldn't tell them I had insurance. And they demanded, they went out and they demanded, number one, that someone pays for the ambulance that I just took.
Before they treat you, they want to make sure they're going to get paid. This is because this is a fancy private hospital.
Very fancy.
In Mexico.
Yeah, yeah. And then they made one of my friends put down $20,000 before they would operate.
Oh my goodness.
I know. It was appalling.
Okay, eventually they do get you stabilized. You end up back here in Toronto at Sunnybrook Hospital.
Yeah.
What happened at Sunnybrook?
Sunnybrook Hospital was absolutely shocked at what they saw. They had heard that the shark attack was coming, never dealt with it before, and they took off the bandages to my leg, which was the first thing, and the stuff that started to ooze out was incredible. And then they opened up the dressing on my arm. I had not lost my arm at that point, it was still attached, and they immediately just went dead serious and cleared me to stat OR. There was a bacteria that's the same as the flesh-eating bacteria on my arm, and there was still sand and salt and debris still left in my wounds. So they were shocked at what they saw.
Are you in like ridiculous pain at this point?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
From the moment I woke up post-op in Mexico till for 2 months, I've been in excruciating pain.
And whatever painkillers they gave you didn't do the job?
The horse tranquilizers, they even went as far as horse tranquilizers, and I just remember spilling milk. I was stoned, but it was still painful, yeah.
At some point they told you you'd have to lose the arm.
Yes.
What went through your head when they told you that?
It was not a surprise at all. So at that point I was quite accepting of it, and I was okay with it. It was how was I going to break the news to my children. I was more concerned with that, and how's my husband going to accept my new body image. But I knew that it was the final step that needed to happen before I could get home. They had been trying to save it, but it just wasn't working. It was too badly damaged, and that tissue kept dying quicker than they could keep up with. So,
how did you tell your kids?
Brilliantly. We brought them, my husband brought them to the hospital, and we sat them down, and we had a whole plan in place. We're very open with our children, and they've been involved in my care up to this point. And I said, the doctors have been trying to fix Mummy's arm, but it's too badly damaged and they have to take it off. And we just waited for the meltdown. And my one daughter puts her hand on mine. She says, "Mommy, does it hurt?" I said, "Yes, it hurts." She goes, "Well, okay then. What's for dinner?" And off they went running around. The kids are resilient and wonderful, and it came off shortly after, and they have been great with it. Yeah.
I want to pick up on something you said a moment. That's an unbelievable line. Oh my God, what's for dinner? Obviously, you have no issues around body image right now because here you are. You were wearing a sweater when you came in here, and you decided to take the sweater off. There are pictures of you in the book, obviously, with your baseball team colleagues.
Yes.
You're not fussed about the fact that you haven't got an arm, and you're not prepared to change the way you dress or behave if some people have tender sensibilities about it, it seems.
I have learned that my body image does bother other people, and I do think twice at times, you know, with covering up. I am a bit self-conscious about it, but I'm a pretty confident person, in case you couldn't tell. And I'm more focused on the fact that I am alive, that I have been given the gift of life, and if the cost of it is an arm or scars on my leg or pain, I'm okay with that.
You are still nursing, right? You're still a nurse.
I'm still a registered nurse, yeah. I'm now in, my role has changed, so I'm on a supervisory role now.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because I recall in the book you're saying it was kind of your life's mission. I mean, it was your calling.
Nursing?
To be a nurse.
Yeah.
And you can't be that kind of nurse anymore.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
I would still like to get there eventually. It is one of the biggest voids in my life, is not nursing. I love the hands-on care. And as rewarding as it is to experience nursing in this way, I have to stand back and I can't touch a patient, and that's very difficult for me. So I'd like to get back there, but I'm seeing what other avenues there are right now.
Given how confident you are,
Yeah.
and how out there you are, you're not a shy, retiring person, I can tell, but I'm guessing that there are still some everyday things in life that are really hard for you to do right now, given that you've only got one arm. Like, I'm just thinking, getting dressed to come here today. Is that much more challenging now? Dressing
is by far the most frustrating thing that I deal with on a daily basis. Getting on shoes, getting on shirts, trying to do up tighter pants. It's a frustrating part, but I just take my time. I can't play volleyball anymore, which was a big part of my life, you know, at certain athletics. I haven't been able to master skiing or bike riding yet, although we're getting to that point. And I joke quite a bit, it's an ongoing thing, that my kids, you know, used to come home, oh, I wish that you had two arms so that you could embrace me. So I can't hug my kids or pick them up the same way. But now we have the standing line, but that's okay, come over here and I'll hug you harder with one.
Nice.
You learn to adapt, even though things are frustrating, you learn to adapt when trauma happens, when things happen, and I think that's really important.
Well, let me pick up on the humor, because you call yourself, you know, shark bait and shark lady and all this kind of thing.
Yes.
Why do you do that?
Because it is what it is. That's really what people, they get a laugh out of it and they realize, oh, she doesn't take herself too seriously, so can I ask you a question about it? And I really encourage that. Before, walking down the street, people would look at me and I was this person. Now when I walk down the street, first thing people see is my deformity, I guess, and then they turn away. So quite often I'll be like, you know, do you want to guess how it happened? Do you want to guess? Because that's what people are thinking, and I welcome that. If people have a handicap, quite often people respect that you are noticing it and talking to them about it. So,
You are, this is very, I mean, who would have guessed this would have happened? You're a shark advocate now.
I am.
You've been attacked by a shark in the most profound way, and yet you're spending a considerable amount of time going to bat for sharks now. How come?
I have this respect for marine life and the ecosystem, and sharks play such an integral role in it. And immediately after my attack, someone sent me video of this massive cull of sharks. The Mexican knee-jerk reaction was, if there's sharks in the water, let's kill them. And right off the bat, they killed 70 sharks. And I thought, why? What were they doing other than they were being chased? They were just doing a natural thing. So I decided I choose to use my voice to speak out for marine conservation and sharks themselves. I figure if I, as you said, the person who has every reason to hate sharks in the world, don't hate sharks, maybe I can get people that hate them and want to kill them a way of turning around their point of view and take a look and say why.
I want to show one more picture.
Show picture.
Love this picture. Go ahead, Sheldon. Let's see this one here.
Oh.
Where's that?
That's at the Warrior Dash. The Warrior Dash is a 5K obstacle course, uphill, up a ski hill, up and down and over obstacles, through crawling on the ground, through mud, through under barbed wire, over fire.
Sounds delightful.
I love it. I love it. It was great. It was really, really important to me that I do that, though, because it's all about overcoming obstacles, and that's me. I needed to run this race and to know that I could face these obstacles and overcome them, and I did, and I've been doing it every year since.
Nicole, you're amazing.
Thank
this
you.
story is, well, that's what the title of the book is, Shark Assault, an amazing story of survival.
Yeah, thank you.
So good of you to visit us at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
That's been great. Thank you for having me.
Every year, a commemoration takes place in Niagara-on-the-Lake. It's been happening for more than 100 years. But for many, its significance is only more resonant today given our collective experience of the current pandemic. Justin Chandler covers the Hamilton-Niagara region for Ontario Hubs, and he joins us from Hamilton to explain. Good to see you, Justin.
Good to see you.
All right, so we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson here. Can you take us back to Niagara Camp in Niagara-on-the-Lake?
So our story starts with St. Vincent de Paul Cemetery, in which there's a Polish enclosure, it's called, and that's where the bodies of 20 Polish soldiers are buried. And you might be wondering why Polish soldiers are buried in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and this takes us back to World War I. Now, Niagara-on-the-Lake is often known for its tourism and its wineries, but back then it was actually a very important military hub, given its proximity to the border and access to other travel routes. And so in Niagara-on-the-Lake, near where the now restored ruins of Fort George are, we had something called Niagara Camp. And Niagara Camp had two portions. One was a site for Canadian conscripts to train, and the other was a Polish camp called Camp Kosciuszko. And this is where volunteers who were fighting to free Poland trained. Now, Poland had been occupied by foreign powers for about 125 years. So these were people who'd volunteered to come to Canada and fight in the war effort in the hope that they could free Poland. Oh, and this here is an archival image of the camp. So this is a whole bunch of the soldiers laid out, and you can see how things would have looked and just how many young men there were training at the time.
Now, you spoke to a local historian about the Polish soldiers and their legacy on the town. He actually ended up writing a book on this. What can you tell us about him and the book itself?
So Richard Merritt, he's a local historian in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and his book is called Training for Armageddon, and it's all about Niagara Camp. And at the time, the people in Niagara-on-the-Lake, when the Poles first started arriving, they were very concerned. They were thinking like, okay, all these young fighting men are going to come to town. They were getting locks changed on their stores and things like that. But eventually, they really became affectionate for them. And Richard Merritt, he calls them the boys when he talks about them. And he talks about how they were just these really good-natured people. And it started to happen that over time, Niagara-on-the-Lake was even stocking Polish books in the library. So the community really embraced these people.
And then something happened in the fall of 1918. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Things obviously took a change for the bad.
Yes. So things were going pretty well up until September. And that's when the 1918 flu pandemic, often called the Spanish flu, although it did not originate in Spain, that's when that hit Canada. And Niagara-on-the-Lake has the unfortunate distinction of being the first place that the flu pandemic touched here in Canada. So it's believed that it probably came over from the United States, but very soon in September, some of the Polish soldiers in Niagara Camp started to get sick. And the flu was very deadly, very dangerous. And there was another wave in January in 1919, but in the end, 31 trainees and 2 officers in the camp died because of the flu.
What I find interesting is, as we are living in a pandemic now, there are some similarities and some differences in the way that things were handled back then. Was the way that, public health safety measures that are being handled now, that drastically different from when they were being handled there?
Not in a lot of ways. I mean, there were not the same social safety nets that people had. So a lot of people would still have to work, but there were closures, there were lockdowns. People even wore masks. They were gauze masks that actually helped spread the virus a little bit more, but people thought they were doing something there. There didn't seem to be any sort of social distancing, Richard Merritt has noted. He said that there was actually a parade during the pandemic where soldiers from the camp marched into town. So something that we would not do now. But if you actually look at what happened during the Spanish flu in Canada, there were a lot of similarities to this pandemic.
And I want to bring up a name. Her name is Elizabeth Asher. She was a journalist for the St. Catharines Standard at the time. Why is she so significant?
Well, Elizabeth Asher is somebody who local historians I spoke to, like Donald Combe or like Roman and Andrew from the Polonia Canada Historical Institute, they say that she was really someone who touched a lot of people and was very important, but is an underappreciated historical figure. They say everyone in Niagara knows Isaac Brock. There's a gigantic statue of him, but not a lot of people know Asher. And now she was a St. Catharines Standard reporter. And she was very active in many different community groups. I don't know how she had time to do anything. But she sort of comes into this story because she was reporting on the Spanish flu in Niagara Camp and on what was happening with the soldiers and on their war efforts. So they actually started calling her the Angel of Mercy. And she worked to help get medical help to them and with other volunteers and people in the town who were caring for them during the pandemic. As you can see from the graveyard, this was actually even done recently. So this is something that people worked to try and to give her her due and help pay a little bit more attention to her. But Elizabeth Asher, one of the things that she did is that cemetery where those 20 Polish soldiers are buried, she actually worked to care for that cemetery. And so one of the ways that they remember this is through Polish Sunday. So the second Sunday of every June, and this has even happened during the pandemic, although without as many people, but people come to the cemetery and they'll lay flowers in years where it's safe. There's a parade. So it's the sort of thing where, although this happened 103 years ago, every single year it's been commemorated and people come out and they show their support. And it's something that I think is really touching. And when I talk to historians about this, it's something that they even tear up when they think about. Like Richard Merritt has pointed out, like the men who died there, they were volunteers. They came out trying to do something good. And tragically, they lost their lives in the pandemic. But I think it's really beautiful that today people are still working so hard to make sure that they're remembered and that what they did for Poland, what they did for Niagara, and what they did for Canada is still remembered.
Do you think that a lot of people don't actually know the history of it? Is there a push to kind of get people to understand, you know, the history of Polish people in Niagara-on-the-Lake?
That's certainly what these people are doing, these historians that I've spoken to. There was an exhibit at the Niagara-on-the-Lake History Museum a couple years ago. But I know when I wrote the story, there were a lot of people commenting saying, I never knew this, or I lived in Niagara and I knew about the cemetery, but I didn't really know the story there. And there was a lot of interest after the piece came out with people sort of calling back to this and thinking about it more. So it's definitely a piece of undertold Canadian and undertold Ontarian history.
A great tidbit of history for sure. Justin, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for tonight's agenda in the summer. I am Jay Jaganathan. Thanks for watching TBO and for joining us online at tbo.org. Have a good weekend, and NAM will see you again on Monday.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism. Ontario Hubs are made possible by the Barry and Laurie Green Family Charitable Trust and Goldie Feldman. And by viewers like you. Thank you.